All right, 30 Days to Greatness, Buyer 101-3, the forms. I've said it before, nothing kills confidence in you as a realtor if you don't know the paperwork and can't answer their questions. So, we're going to take a look at some of the basics here. The goal here is for you to have a certain level of competence so that you'll have a certain level of confidence so that people can have confidence in you. All right, so Tina's going to take you through the disclosure regarding agency relationship, which is required on every single transaction. I don't care what it is. If you're a transaction coordinator, if you're listing something, if you're selling something, the state requires the disclosure regarding agency relationship, or sometimes gets shortened to agency disclosure. So we're going to take a good look at that and the purchase agreement. In addition, she's going to walk you through the checklist of the other forms, but just the checklist. It's your job to put in the work of getting to know these forms so that you have confidence because of your competence and you can help buyers. And so take a look at this.
Hi, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about two of our buyer's forms, the purchase agreement, or PA, and the disclosure regarding real estate agency relationships. You'll also get a copy of the buyer's checklist with the email that Paul will send you. So, first thing we're going to talk about today is the purchase agreement. I like to go from the listing ticket right to this little transaction button. I've already done it. I've already started the wizard. That will pre-fill out some of the forms for me and save me a little bit of time. So because I've already started it, we've got the form here. I'm going to start with our purchase agreement. And we'll walk through this together. The first thing I want you to know is that you need to know these forms upside down and backwards. And I really mean that literally, because a lot of times if you're with somebody, you're going to have the forms. You're usually across the table. You're going to have them upside down. You have to know what they are that way. The reason I like to use the wizard is it will pre-fill out some of this information. So the MLS gets filled out. The listing broker information gets filled out. Because I put it in the wizard, the selling broker information is filled out. Also the township, this one happens to be in the township of Macomb and the city of Macomb, gives your tax ID information, your legal description, and your commonly known address. Now, I am not going to go through every section of this form. You'll have to go through it and know it. But here is what I tell people. I say, I see this form every day. I'm going to give you the highlights of this form, and then I'm going to have you read it, ask me any questions, and then we'll sign it, which is what I'm going to do with you. So, because I messed up my first, I'm not going to say how many webinars. We're doing this on Sunday the 22nd, so we'll put that date in. It highlights in red for the date that is there. We already did property description. Now, this section here says basically that everything that is attached in that home goes with the home. There are some things you're going to want to put in the blank space that are not attached, but you still want them to go with your sale. A lot of times those are things like the appliances. So what I'd like to do is just copy, and then I paste them right into my purchase agreement. There we go. We're getting the dishwasher, the disposal, microwave, and stove. This section here would be for anything that was not going with the home. Say the roses in the front yard were listed in the purchase agreement. You would put that in. We're just going to, for this case, just say roses so that you're acknowledging you see that that's not staying with the home. The price, you just put in the numbers of the price, not, you don't have to do the written amount. In this case, the asking price is $339.9. We're going to say we're going to offer $345 because that's what I did my numbers based on. So see, it'll just auto-populate that. You don't have to do the cents. It will just show up when you go to the next field. Now your choices are, you have a cash sale, or in this case, we're going to do a cash sale with a new mortgage. So we're getting a lender. We're going to have a conventional mortgage. You can write conventional. I just do CONV. Everybody knows what that is. In the amount of, how much is your loan for? In this case, the amount of the mortgage is going to be $268, and I know that because I did that earlier. And our down payment costs are going to be $67,000. Now, how long does your buyer have to apply for the mortgage? I always put 5 days. If it's on a Saturday or weekend and they haven't done it, just give them a few extra days. Then we want to know, how many days does the lender have to get the mortgage done? In this case, I always put 45 days. They can do it sooner, but give them enough time to get done what they need to get done. Your last option is a land contract, and there are additional documents with that. Next thing we need to talk about is your earnest money deposit. How much is this person putting down for an earnest money? We're going to say they're going to put $5,000 down. We're not going to put any extra down at another time, and it's going to be deposited within 2 calendar days, making our total amount of earnest money $5,000. Okay, now who's getting that? In this case, it's your buyer. We're going to say that Red Door Realty is going to hold the earnest money deposit. And because I put this in Paul's name, Paul Curtis is going to be the agent for this. And then you would, of course, sign in AuthentiSign. Closing on or before. Because I've put 45 days, I usually count off 7 weeks, because you might have a couple days that they're not, before they sign. So today's the 22nd, gives us 1 week in July, gives us 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in August, and 6, 7, 2 weeks in September. So I'm going to put Friday the 7th. Sounds like a good day to me. Then you'll have your buyer initial, and we'll go on to page 2. Possession. In this case, because we're going to fill out the form, we're going to learn a little more about it. We're going to say that, and the seller in this case, frankly, is asking for occupancy. We're going to say, yep, we're going to give you occupancy till 12 noon. We're going to say we're only giving you 2 weeks, 14 days after closing. Now, this next one is an amount. You can only put a dollar amount in here. I don't like to do that. I like to put 1/30th PITI, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So I do this part in AuthentiSign or handwrite it, 1/30th PITI. The next part would be who's getting the keys for the day of occupancy. In this case, we'll say it's going to be the buyer is going to get the keys. The next thing is sewer and water. Because there is possession, we're going to wait until day of possession. You don't want to pay the seller's water bill. This is just saying that the seller is agreeing to order title insurance and offer the commitment of title to the buyer. But the buyer now has the option to also get their own title company, and I generally recommend, unless it's a cash sale, that you do that. Title objection. If something is wrong with the title company needs to get that cleared up before you close. Taxes, of course, are prorated. You would pay until the time you use the house, and they're paying for the part that they use the house. Assessments, most assessments are paid at time of closing. There are sometimes exceptions, but generally they're paid. Also, condominium dues, proration, maintenance of property. The seller is responsible to keep the property in the same condition as you saw it and made the offer. Utilities, the seller has to get the final water readings and turn off all their utilities, and then the buyer, of course, has to put them in their name. Seller disclosure statement. This is just saying that you've received a disclosure, or not. So if you've received it, you initial that you've gotten it. If not, you say, no, I didn't get it. Lead-based paint. This is the same thing. You're acknowledging that you received it. Now, you also have a choice here to either get a number of days to have a lead-based paint inspection or to waive the lead-based paint inspection. what happens if either buyer or seller defaults, and then fees. Generally here we don't charge any fees, compliance fees, so I just put a 0. And then I move on to the time limit. I always fill out the time limit, and the reason is this. It's good until this date and time or until withdrawn in writing. So if this day and time passes, you can still buy the house, but you're not required to. So we're going to say we're going to have the offer valid until 5 p.m. tomorrow, 23rd. This is where you would, if you have any other addenda, you would just show that it's attached now. You can still attach some later. Flood insurance, if they are interested and they're worried about being in a floodplain, say, yep, I want to get flood insurance. I want 10 days to see if they're in a floodplain, and say 2 days to notify them that either we want to get out of the deal or whatever our options we want. Property inspection. How many days do you want? This is for your inspection and to also notify the seller that you're dissatisfied with results. In this case, we're going to say 7 days. That'll be plenty of time. And then, of course, every page your buyer is initialing. And then here's where you would want to say that my buyer does or does not want to have a property inspection. I generally always try to get the buyer to have one. If they don't, I still tell them to say, yes, you do want to have one. You don't have to have it, but then you have your options open. Municipal inspections. This is where if there is a city that requires a municipal inspection, how much money do you want the seller to pay for any repairs? It is your job to make sure you know if the city that your buyer is buying in has a municipal inspection. You can call city or go on city websites. How much time you have for any legal action that they'll stop showing after the inspection contingency. Final walkthrough prior to closing. Your buyer has the right to walk through that property again within 48 hours prior to closing so that you know that the property is in the same condition as when you made the offer. Entire agreement. This is the entire agreement. There's no side agreements. Fax and electronic signatures are the same as all others. Miscellaneous. And then other terms and conditions. This is where you would put something like, say your buyer has another home to sell. So you would say that the sale is contingent upon the sale of their other home located at blah, blah, blah. Or say the washer and dryer weren't included in the items that they're giving, but your buyer wants to get both of those. So you put them in there, washer and dryer. We usually put a little more, but that's okay. All right, so because I did the wizard, Caitlin's printed name is already in here as the buyer. You would have her sign on this section over here, an AuthentiSign, and your name there as a witness, and of course the date that you're signing it. Then your seller's signing. Now, then you would get to what we call the bottom line. Do not have your buyer sign this until after the seller has signed, even though her name shows up. Okay, so done with the purchase agreement. Let's move on to the disclosure regarding real estate agency relationships, or agency disclosure. And from now on, we're going to call it agency disclosure because it's so much shorter. Okay, here's your agency relationships. Now, what this form is for is to let everybody know what duties, these are your fiduciary duties that you owe to your client or a client. This form is required by the state. It goes with all real estate transactions. For a lease, it goes with it. If you're the listing agent, if you're the buyer's agent, if you are an agent acting for yourself, you're going to sign that you are the agent for yourself. So you're going to sign as the buyer or the seller and also as the agent. Read through all that, the specifics for seller's agent, what you're required to do, buyer's agent, dual agent, which we do not recommend. You could have a listing that you represent the buyer and still be listed as the seller's agent. But for filling out the form's sake, we are in this transaction going to be a buyer's agent. Then we get to designated agency. In this office, we're designated agents, which means that you have a responsibility to your client You don't have the responsibility. So this, the same responsibility that, say, another agent in the office has another listing. You don't have the same responsibilities as them because you're a designated agent. Okay, this is where your signature would go, the date. And then this is, in this case, does or does not your client have an agency relationship with another real estate agent? We're going to say, nope, they do not. And they're a potential buyer. This is where their name would go, and then they would sign above. And then, of course, date it. All right, let me exit this form, and we'll go back to, I already said that the checklist will be in the email that Paul gives you. Now we're going to go to our wrap-up video. And
All right, so you had a look at the checklist, the disclosure regarding real estate agency relationships, a purchase agreement, and there are other forms there. So your homework is to do one or two write-ups as if you're working with a client. Find a listing online that looks like it'd be fun for someone to buy. Take the checklist of the forms from Red Door and fill out the whole thing and email it to me to show me that you understood and you can do it. And that'll help you feel confident when you're ready to help somebody to purchase a home. All right, go get them. Tag, you're it.